Well, hello, all my friends in Twitch land. I'm Aim Grabelny. You're back with us here for AWS Howdy Partner, another episode of Howdy Partner. Some new faces. You get to see mine again. It's been a while. It's been a while since I've seen you all. I've got some introductions to do, but first, AWS Howdy Partner is the show you're currently watching and should continue watching because we're going to have some exciting things later, some hands-on demos. We're going to hear from our partner here today, Scott from Lacework. And we've got a brand new host with us over here, Eugene. Let's do a round of intros, and then let's talk a little bit about what we're going to do on today's show. Eugene, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name is Eugene. I am a partner solution architect here at AWS, and I'm very excited to join, let him introduce himself, but Scott from Lacework. So good to meet you all.
Cool. Thanks, Eugene. Cool. Hi, everybody. Scott Ford. I'm a principal architect at a company called Lacework out of the San Francisco Bay Area, and I'm really excited to be here with both of you on Twitch TV today for AWS.
Yeah. This is the highlight of my week. I'll say that. I'm super excited about Lacework and learning about what Lacework can do for all the automation with building code that we'll be talking about with Code Pipeline and the other CodeStar suite of products with AWS. But Eugene, do you want to take us through what is Howdy Partner? Who should watch? What are we going to do today? What do you think?
So Howdy Partner is for, I would say, builders, developers, people that are actually going into the nitty gritty, the implementation side of things. That's actually what I'm going to say about who Howdy Partner is for. And today, what I'm going to be talking about before I pass it off to Scott is what is similar to what AM was just talking about, Code Pipeline, and what Code Pipeline is and what the entire idea of it is to make your life as a developer, as a builder, a lot easier. And so Code Pipeline, the entire code suite, is part of Amazon's way of employing CI/CD. Now, CI/CD stands for continuous integration and continuous delivery. And so I'm just going to go over a quick overview of what that is. Many of you already may know this, so just bear with me for a little bit. So you think of continuous integration as something that will build your application. So when you're writing something in Java and you compile things, you can have something like Jenkins to build your code, execute all the unit tests that hopefully we've all written, and the integration tests that hopefully we've all written as well, alongside any of the code that we build. And so that is kind of continuous integration. Now, moving beyond that is the idea of going from your local host, your application in your local host, to production where everyone else can use it. And that's where continuous delivery kind of comes in. And so continuous delivery and so the entire process of CI/CD answers the question of how can I safely, quickly get my application from my computer to everybody else. And so I'm sure many of you have kind of seen the infinity sign of CI/CD, where part of it is code, or plan to code to build to test to release to deploy to monitor, and then it kind of repeats that cycle all over again. Anyway, CI/CD is becoming increasingly important in kind of in the tech world. One, because everybody wants to differentiate their products by creating more features. And how do you create more features? Well, you want to be able to develop and release these features as easy as possible. And so that's kind of where CI/CD kind of comes in. And so to give a little backstory about myself, I actually went to a coding boot camp and that's kind of my beginning of my journey into the tech scene. And I remember at the boot camp, we would just make kind of simple web apps. And I remember the first first 2-3 weeks we're working, we're learning about JavaScript, we're learning about Node.js, so on and so forth. And then I kind of came to the time of deploying things. And the 3-4 weeks that we're all writing code, debugging and all that stuff, that never really hit my head. And so when we were trying to deploy it, we were using things like Heroku, which was easier. And I remember my first time trying to deploy on AWS, and we were given this 2-page manual. And you have to follow everything like line by line. And if you forget one thing, something is going to break. And so that kind of brought me to my first exposure to the idea of like deploying something. And as I kind of started my journey into my first like job as like a software developer, at my old company, I would hear horror stories. Right? Well, horror story might be a harsh way of saying it, but you can kind of decide.
It's appropriate for the season.
Appropriate for, yeah. It's almost Halloween. So imagine you work so hard to write your feature. You spend 2 weeks of doing it, and you've written all your unit tests. You try to test as much edge cases as possible to make sure that you don't break any current functionality. Now imagine you can only release that code once a month. So the idea of continual like CI/CD, and this is like not too long ago. This is only like 10, 14 years ago, where like a really large global company was still doing something like this. And you would be on rotation, on call to go in on a Saturday, because everyone loves going into work on a Saturday afternoon, and everyone loves to just kind of hang around a conference room and waiting and making sure that nothing goes wrong during deployment. Because if something does go wrong, you're gonna have to do a root cause analysis. You're gonna have to explain to your manager why you messed up. You have to explain to the director why you messed up, and so on and so forth. So fun times. And that is kind of the idea of why CI/CD is so important. Because you don't want to have to release once a month. You want to release as soon as you can. Like if it works, and if everyone signs off on it, you want to be able to release that to the public. And so,
wait. Hey, Eugene, are you saying that all the services that AWS released last year, everybody just didn't have like big run books they followed manually to release them?
No.
Manual processes?
We had a cart actually. I was talking to Eugene about this. I don't know if you had this in any job you ever worked at, Scott, but back at a startup I worked at about 10 years ago, we had an image cart is what it was called. And the QA people, which was like 2 people in the entire company, because this company like 50 people, would come around with their cart when you're ready to do a release, and they would burn the image from your laptop to the cart so that they could go and start doing it in production. Is that not how things are still done?
Yeah, right. Yeah, we've come a long way.
Yeah.
Golden this is indisputable now. Right. Golden image card.
But we're kind of joking about how things have improved so much, but as companies big large enterprise companies, they're still not at like quite the CI/CD level that a lot of startups are kind of are able to kind of benefit from. So when my first job as like a software developer, the idea of a continuous integration wasn't really like continuous. You had to, you would write your code, and then you would actually have to put that change into like a quote unquote shelf. And this is all manual. So you have to, put down what your like change list number was, and then it will execute all the unit tests, it will execute all the integration tests. And if it passes, then hey, like you're able to kind of check that into like, the main branch. And so that's kind of annoying, because you kind of just, as techies, like we want to automate as much of everything as possible. We just want to be able to do what we want to do. And we don't want to deal with kind of like the nitty gritty of a lot of different things. And so I kind of also like to just say that, like, not everybody is still on their way to becoming like to have a true CI/CD pipeline for their applications. Anyways, so that being said, what I am going to kind of show, and something that I kind of wish, 5 years ago, I told my younger self, like, hey, you can actually like do something like this, and it's gonna be a lot easier than reading a 2-page manual of like how to deploy things on AWS. Although, to be fair, I don't think Code Pipeline was there 5-6 years ago. I may be wrong about that, but anyways, so what I'm going to kind of demonstrate next is a small demo to kind of show how easy it is now to deploy changes, to push changes, and to kind of see that be reflected onto your whatever is hosting your application.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add here too, real quick, Eugene. Let's get your screen up here. But like when I first, so I didn't come from a direct CS background style thing. So when I first started learning how to code, it was really difficult to get from, hey, I wrote this, on my computer, like how do I get it someplace else, right? Like there weren't a lot of tutorials or a lot of resources at least when I was learning. Maybe things are different now, but just like for that simple thing of like, cool, yeah, this is how you write a web server in Node.js or something. But then how do I get that running on a server somewhere? And then you had to start learning about SSH, and you had to learn about like all these other things just to move a file, like maybe FTP or something. So like I feel like while what you're going to show us here with code pipeline and getting a CI/CD pipeline set up might seem a little bit more daunting than just moving a file from one place to the other. That's kind of all it is, right? It's just moving the check-ins that you're doing to get someplace else, right? And there's steps along the way. I just wanted to call that out. I don't know if that's useful. Hopefully it was.
Yeah.
I think also I want to call out too that, what you're touching on here, this is so fundamental now. You do not get to skip this step anymore. If you're building a business and you're, most of us were working with customers that are, they're building digital businesses, digital products. You don't get to do this any other way anymore other than getting on board, building out a one-way to production, a pipeline where everybody's working to get those features and capabilities out to the customers as quickly as possible. And as Eugene said, it is a process, and it's a journey that you go on. You don't start off with the best pipeline in the world from day one. It's something that you will always build on. You add more sophisticated testing, more process to it as you move throughout. But this is just so fundamental now to how businesses operate in all markets, in all areas of business are adopting CI/CD. So I'm excited to see what you've built out, Eugene.
Well, actually, I'm more excited to see what you built out, Scott, because mine is just relatively simple, and it's kind of want to give the audience just a brief overview of the code suite. So what I've kind of done is just a simple index HTML, just hosted on an EC2 instance. The services that I'm using is code commit, code deploy, and code pipeline. And so with that, I'm just going to kind of just demonstrate how easy it is. So let's just say that you have some type of application and you want to make some changes to it. I'm just going to write and
did you love typing in front of people?
Yeah, it's a great showcase of how well I can't type.
It's always.
And so, so just have a small message right here that I'm going to be adding to it. And I'm actually just going to change it so you all can see it real soon. And also just want to say, please write good commit messages. I might I might shoot myself in the foot by saying that, because some of my commit messages for this demo might not be that great, but write good commit messages. It's helpful for everybody.
Amen.
That's your public service announcement for the.
It's my PSA for today. Yep. So
do as I say, not as I do.
And so we can kind of see the history of the different execution events. And more importantly, what we're going to see in a little bit is to kind of go back, just want to say that this is how I've connected my repo to Howdy Partner, not Howdy Partner, but to my repository and code commit. So I won't show too much about this, but there's different features here where you can change different branches, you can create pull requests, cloning URL, so you can actually pull the source material down. And I'm able to kind of show you guys one thing. So what just happened is my push got into code commit, and now it's executing towards the code pipeline. So you can now see that the deploy is in progress. And so one thing that do kind of, and it's already done. And so one reason why I wanted to do kind of a simpler application is I don't want to take too much of the time going through this simple pipeline, because Scott's going to show us something way cooler. And so let's just check it out. Is this going to happen? Hey, look. So you now so you can now see that my change here is now updated on the actual on the instance. And so before, like how I was talking to you all about like my first time trying to deploy something, and I think it was just I think it was again like an index HTML, just trying to get something online. It was not as simple as this. You would have to push it. You would have to grab like your GitHub repository or just like the different files, and you would have to like push it somewhere. And instead, now you have something quite a bit easier. But that's one aspect of code pipeline that I kind of want to discuss. And as Scott mentioned earlier, not everyone kind of starts out with a perfect CI/CD pipeline. There's a lot of things that you can actually do. And so one thing that I didn't show is code build, which actually is the portion of like the CI where you're actually building your code, you're executing like the test in it. And there's also other ways to do that. You can actually also hook that up with Jenkins to do that for you if you don't want to use like code build. And throughout the entire CI/CD like workflow, there's also now a lot of abilities to kind of make configuration checks while you're making your pull requests and so things like that. And so all of this is just really meant to say that CI/CD is continuously evolving as the company or the team is learning more about their application and how it's going to grow and how they're going to take it to the next level. And so there's a lot of customization that can happen. And I think with that, I'm going to I'm going to let Scott take over and have him demonstrate to you guys what he's built in the different customization features that Lacework, configuration security that Lacework can kind of implement into your CI/CD pipeline.
Yeah, Scott. So Eugene, first, thank you for that. That was amazing. Things have definitely changed since the world of. I said FTP earlier. I should have said SFTP. Everything SFTP first.
Especially,
right?
Yep.
Especially with you on the line.
This is a security-centric episode for sure. We got to be talking SFTP.
That's right.
Oh,
yeah.
Actually, just one thing I want to mention. So, kind of as we're talking about security, I think every developer's like worst fear is you wrote a great piece of code and you think it's amazing. It's your baby, it's your child, and then you push it in, and then it's in production, and then some alarm starts going off because, hey, something broke. And then you're going to have to be like, wait, we have to roll back. We have to figure out what happened. And then we have to estimate whether the actual issue actually cost like the company money. That, well, at least for me, that was kind of like my worst nightmare going in, because then you had to explain a lot of things of like why you didn't do like certain things. But like what I said earlier about automating and kind of like alleviating these worries, developers like to kind of automate a lot of stuff. And so again, I'm just going to give it back to Scott.
Cool. Real quick too. So for anybody joining us, this is AWS Howdy Partner. Eugene just gave us a wonderful demo of setting up a very, very fast and simple code pipeline. For anybody who's new to AWS, Eugene just went through code commit, which is essentially just a Git repo, right? It's AWS's version of a Git repo. You've probably seen other products like GitHub or GitLab. Very similar. Then it sounds like, Scott, you're going to talk through some code build stuff too, which is usually the next step in the pipeline where your actual artifacts are created. Eugene was just doing a index.html file, so no real need to build anything here. But if you had something to compile, or if you had packages to pull down, or I don't know, maybe some code to inspect with security in mind. That's where all that would be in code build. Code deploy is where you then configure it to hit a target, right? It looked like, Eugene, your target was EC2 instance, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, you could have also deployed it to S3, for example, too. So there's lots of different deployment targets for code deploy. And then pipeline itself, code pipeline, orchestrates the whole thing. One of the cool things about code pipeline, I wanted to bring this up when we were talking earlier, Eugene. We had where I worked, the same place that had the golden image card. We had our Git person, right? The one person that managed the repo for the core product that we built, and we actually used
the
Subversion.
Gold mono repo.
Pretty much, and we were actually in Subversion. I'm trying to repaint history a little bit, so I don't come off looking that bad. But not that there's anything wrong with Subversion. If you use it, I love you. You're all great. But yeah, we had this one person that managed all of the merges into the main branch. And if he was out on vacation, then nothing got done. So yeah, you could, if you still are operating that way, you should stop, number one. But code pipeline supports things like manual checks, right? So human in the process type things that you can come in and halt any step of the process if you need somebody to come in and sign off. But Scott, you are joining us from Lacework, which is our wonderful partner in the AWS Partner Network. Tell us about Lacework first before we get into the CI/CD aspect of where you fit in.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks so much. Before we transition, I think it's important to give everybody the background on Lacework and what it is and what we do. This last couple of weeks has been really fun for me. I have a lot of experience with CI/CD. My background is as a long-term systems administrator for many years. I've been using AWS since after it's launched. But I've worked with really large enterprises, small startups, and so on. And automation's been my thing. So it's been delightful to get to dive into to all things from automating the cloud to continuous integration, continuous delivery pipelines, and so on. I've used pretty much every CI/CD tool that exists out there today. If you're new to CI/CD, you shouldn't worry about too much. Learn any of them, and the patterns exist. The same patterns exist in any one of them. It's like designing different stages and the phases that need to happen, or the jobs that. From my experience, that was a great overview, Eugene. I'd never used code commit, never used code build before the last couple of weeks, and I barely looked at the documentation. And it was a great litmus test for me that I could just jump in, get a pretty good sense of how the tools operated, and I was up and cooking with gas, as they say. So I am going to be using GitHub today for the work that I'll be doing, but I also built everything that I am going to show you today with Code Commit too, and they both work really, really great. So so it's really fun. I'm excited to show you guys what we built. But before we do that, Lacework. I think I'm going to go ahead and share out my screen. I think it would be easier to have a backdrop and take you all through what Lacework is, what we do, and go ahead and click on this. Let me know when you guys can see my screen.
Are up and running.
Good?
You're good.
Up and running. Perfect. All right. So Lacework is it's a 100% SaaS security platform that's built to solve the challenges of modern cloud security. We've actually been around for a long time. 2015 in tech, that's a fair amount of time. But the reason you probably have never heard about us is that we were solving a really, really hard problem, and that is that up to this point, cloud security, the challenges of cloud security have really been trying to be solved by the same kind of legacy approaches to it. That is, if you have an experience in, legacy application development, security, managing data centers, you're talking about rules-based systems where you say, we're going to secure the perimeter. We're going to say that these IP addresses can talk to each other on these ports, with this protocol, and we'll kind of manage security in that way. what are we doing today? I mean, if you look at AWS, the way that customers are using AWS, that you're talking about massive scale. First of all, you're talking about ephemeral workloads in a lot of cases, whether they're on hosts, whether they're containers. You're talking about instances coming online and offline, scaling out horizontally and back, right? So if you're a security person and your background is managing based off of rules, static rules, how do you even begin to do that, right? So our founder, our founding engineers, they came from the data world, and they looked at cloud security and were like, this is a data problem to solve. We really need to be able to understand what environments look like and be able to start to manage security in a more automated process. And that's really what Lacework is all about. So what you're looking at here is the console for our SaaS platform, and it tells a pretty good story of what it is that we do. We ingest data from our customers' cloud environments, and the data that we're ingesting are things like your CloudTrail logs or your resource configurations, right? So how you have your load balancers, how you have configured, how you have IAM configured, et cetera. All that is ingesting. We also have an agent that deploys out onto your hosts or into Kubernetes environments, and we ingest network metadata. So that is the 5-tuple, the source IP, dest IP, source port, dest port, protocol. We also ingest some things around, we stitch together DNS. All that information is continuously being ingested into Lacework from our customers' environments, right? So it's all around configuration assessments, what's happening out in your cloud. Now, what we do, though, is with all that data is we process it and we build a baseline for what your environment looks like. And from that baseline, we start to build out a behavior of what an environment looks like. Now, this is really important, right? And you guys, I'm sure, have a lot of experience with this as well. Our customers don't have one AWS environment. Right? Who's got one AWS environment? They've got hundreds. I mean, AWS, you guys yourselves recommend that customers, you don't put your production environment and your development environment to the same account, right? That's a recipe for disaster. But in our customers' cases, they literally have hundreds of AWS environments, and each one of those could be a different business unit, could be a different application, right? And they all have different behaviors. And Lacework, when we're starting to pull in all that data, we understand the difference between, say, your dev environment or your staging environment, your QA environment, or this business unit's environment versus that business unit's environment. And we build out this behavior understanding baseline of what an environment looks like. And it's from there that once you deploy us out, a customer doesn't have to write any rules at all, zero. So we go into a new customer and they deploy us out in their environment. And the first time we work with them, it's like, okay, well, we're all deployed out. We've got you. AWS is all connected up, and we're ingesting the data now from your environment. We'll see you in 3 to 7 days, and we'll start to look at the findings of what Lacework has. And those findings are events that we raise up inside the environment. So events for us are anomalies off of the baseline that we built. So after the first hour, we have the first baseline, then the second hour we compared to the first, and the third we compared to the second and the first, and so on and so forth. 90 days by default. It's like imagine a black box in your environment of understanding everything that's happening, all the changes that are happening out there. But of those events, though, we also apply additional machine learning, additional automation to it to raise up the criticality of the events based off of what's happening. So known indicators of compromise. If your environment's talking to a known bad IP addresses, or there's known bad file hashes that are running in your environment, or say Eugene it was creating users. He creates users inside of the AWS environment, but all of a sudden logs in from Southeast Asia, and we've never seen him logged in from Southeast Asia before, and starts creating users. All those things are anomalies that Lacework just picks up without you ever having to write any kind of rules at all. So on average, what you're looking at here is, so we're looking at one of our demo environments, right? So we're looking at a viewpoint of the last 30 days. I could scroll out here to the last 90 days to be able to see the different year of data that we ingested, so almost a billion points of data. We've organized that into 22 million behaviors that we've seen. From those behavior baseline, we've detected around 7,000 events, right? So over the last 90 days, if asked yourself, could you analyze 7,000 events? No, you couldn't, right? But on average, our largest customers see between 1 to 2 critical or high events per day. And that's phenomenal, right? So these are the things that, so when their priority number one is, as what Eugene was talking about, it's shipping new features. When it comes to security, you need to be able to triage and get to what's most actionable, what's most critical about your environment. And Lacework does all of that without having to write any rules about the environment. So I'll pause for just a second and see if you guys have any questions about this, or if there's any questions coming in, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, so one question that Drew Park asked is, can Lacework pick up like various like network policies in his Kubernetes cluster, because Kubernetes is the hot button topic right now.
So pick up network policies that he's written and search for those, create rules for those. So at this point today, like we don't really have the way that Lacework works, and I'll dive into what Kubernetes environments look like already. We are going to we're going to see everything. We're going to understand the baseline of how his Kubernetes environment operates day to day anyways. And so if he's got network policies that are in there that make it so that systems aren't supposed to do certain things, at the point that they were to go outside of any of those policies, we're going to see that as an anomaly anyways. And we will raise that up, depending on what the policy is that's being violated. But there is always this, look, if you need to write your own static rules for something, there is the ability to create your own custom policies in Lacework as well. It's just that the majority of our customers do not do that.
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to ask a question. So how do you get from like so much data ingestion coming in and only, and I'm not asking like, why are you only getting like 1 or 2 like alerts, like, high item like alerts a day, but like what's kind of powering the decision-making process between like, comparing baselines and what's kind of out of the norm and what's not?
That's a great question, Eugene. So this is what's powering that is a lot of research and development that happened over years here at Lacework. So all the machine learning that we use is proprietary, that we built internally in-house, and so these models are things that we've been working on as a company for a number of years. And so being founded in 2015 and not really coming to market until 2017 is the point that we were in stealth mode, really developing these models, so which we continuously work on. So we build all the proprietary machine learning in-house. We also have our own security threat research analysis team that builds a lot of the threat capabilities that go into it. So when we're talking about those known indicators of compromise, that's something that we continuously work at behind the scenes too as a company.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so I think one last comment I kind of wanted to make is just the idea of only getting like, high, like really important alerts. And if there's any developers that's listening in the audience right now, I think many times when you're getting for personally, my example is, I remember, being on my last team and we would have a bunch of alerts kind of coming in. And, that's great. We're learning a lot about our applications like health, like in real time. The problem is that once you're getting 10 alerts a minute, 5 alerts a second, it becomes noisy, right? And so kind of like that, the graphic that you kind of have, there's no way, and like you were saying earlier, there's no way you're going to be able to kind of analyze like 7,000 events. So I think it's really cool that that Lacework is able to kind of like, give you what you need, like very high, like, high risk items, and not the stuff that you don't. Because at least in my experience, what my team did was, instead of alerting to like, our main team channel, we just set like a separate channel and set all the alerts there. But then at that point, it kind of becomes useless. Like, why even have these alerts in the first place? So anyways.
Yeah, that's great, Eugene. There's a couple of points that I want to follow. So actually, that's so near and dear to my heart. I cut my teeth as in systems administration, deploying large-scale global Nagios deployments. And if you're not familiar with Nagios, it's a monitoring system that's been around for forever. And so as like an early systems administrator, I started writing all my own custom application checks in Perl. Yay, Perl. And I would literally write a check for almost anything I could think of. And on the other end of that were the people receiving those alerts who just created, the Outlook rule, if you will, that would then take my alerts and send them off to a box and never look at them. Because a colleague of mine said this recently, and I think it's so true. At the point that you have 1,000 alerts, you effectively have 0 alerts. Like, what are you going to do with that information? And so that's really what we're focused on, and why companies are adopting us, is that we give you high fidelity information about events so that you can focus in on what's most critical and stay focused on the ultimate thing that's most critical to business, which is shipping products, right? Shipping digital products. Lacework, we're in the same boat. We're a SaaS security platform. We've got tons of features that we're working to release on. That is priority number 1, shipping new features to our customers. Priority number 2, keeping all of it secure and safe, and keeping our customers secure and safe. So that's our mission.
Yeah. It's the old adage: if everything is on fire, then nothing's on fire, right? Like
that's right. Yeah,
that's right. Stuck with me. A manager told me that once. I also want to say thank you, Eugene, for not saying anything bad about your current team and just using examples from your old team.
Whoa.
as a member of your current team, like, we're perfect, and there's nothing that we could do wrong. Right?
Yeah, there's nothing we can do wrong. Perfect. Just like everyone's CI/CD pipeline as they first start out.
Yeah.
Anyway, take it away, Scott. Sorry.
Well, cool. There's so much more that the platform does. So again, you deploy us out into your environment, AWS, right? AWS crew. We're also multi-cloud, of course. We once deployed out, we do things like we give you continuous configuration assessments for all of your cloud resources. So out of the box, our customers don't have to set anything up, and you get CIS reporting, you get HIPAA reporting, ISO 27001, you get NIST, PCI, SOC 2. All of this is just continuously run across your environments. Every 24 hours, we run these new assessments and generate these reports. So continuous compliance reporting out of the box. We also on the application side, once you deploy us out into your environment, as I said, we build out, we stitch together everything that's generating network connections inside of your environment. And what you're looking at here is a patented technology that we call polygraph. And polygraph is a visual representation of everything in your environment that's generating network connections, whether it's on Kubernetes, whether it's on a host, whether it's a Docker container. If something's generating a network connection, we capture what that process is, who launched it out, what it talked to, and stitch that all together. So what we're looking at right now is a 1-hour snapshot between the hour of 10 a.m. and 11 a.m. inside the environment. And if I go through and I start something like external, right, I can see in my environment every single thing that had an external connection, what came in, what it talked to, what that process then went on to talk to from there. So the full end-to-end is captured. If we look on the outside, so if we scroll back out again, you see on the left external connections coming in. end to Lacework. Sorry, my monitor just went off for a second. In the middle, we have all the east-west traffic, so applications talking, processes talking to each other internally. And on the right, we stitch together full DNS, so everything that went outbound and what it talked to. Now, all of this information, it does exist inside of your environment. Yes, it's all there, right? But what's very unique to Lacework is that we stitch it all together continuously to have this viewpoint of what's going on in the world. And so, again, we're looking at a snapshot right now of a very specific hour, but if you go out with Lacework, out of the box, our customers get 90 days of a continuous analysis of their environment. And so this right now, as I scroll back out, is a snapshot of every single process that was running inside the environment, the total CPU usage of my environment, the total memory usage, total number of containers, external, in and out, all that information across it. So if I wanted to say, I don't know, search for something like, let's see what Python was only running in one place in the last 3 months in my environment and what it was talking to. All that information is stitched together. And if we scroll down further, like all the data that we're collecting, this is a list of every single application that ran in my environment over the last 3 months, every port that listened, every executable that ran inside my environment, the command line executable, so how these different processes were launched out inside the environment, every application, the list of every single container that ran inside of my environment. Stop for a second and think to yourself right now, if you had to ask yourself, I need to know what these 2 containers did in my environment 3 months ago, everything that they talked to all in one place. How quickly could you do that, right? So all this is at your fingertips with Lacework. With this too is we're continuously assessing all the containers for vulnerabilities. So every single vulnerability that ran inside my environment over the last few months, and so on and so forth. All of this data is what exists inside the Lacework platform. Now, our customers aren't using the polygraph and sitting here and staring at this thing to try to make sense of what's going on in front of the environment. We raise up events and route those events to our customers wherever they need them. So integrations in your Slack channel or integrations sending out to PagerDuty or email, whatever it is that you need to do, we integrate and send these events out. I think it makes sense if I go ahead and show you just really quick what an event looks like. So when an event comes out, it looks something like this, all the data that comes out. So we got an event, this was a medium event where an application Hydra launched out on a particular host as user Ubuntu. It then made an SSH connection to another host as user root. So we've got 2 applications, 2 hosts, 2 users, all the information that was stitched together right in one place. So the who, the what, the when, the what is the application, the instances that it ran on, the AWS instance IDs that it ran on, and then 30 pages of process information about everything that was involved in this event. If we scroll down, we get some general investigation questions, all of the different sub-events that made up this larger event about the users involved and the actions that were taken. And if I scroll down here to Hydra and just really quickly, look at this, what we see is a polygraph of this very specific event. So we got a user logging in for Cupertino as Ubuntu. They get an SSH terminal, they get a bash terminal, and then something very unique to Lacework, they escalate their privileges, right? So we track privilege escalation on a host or across hosts. It doesn't matter. You can't hide your tracks from Lacework. And they get a bash terminal. They launch out Dash, which launches Hydra, and Hydra is a password cracker. And it's at that point that Hydra starts making these outbound SSH connections in the environment to start to move laterally and look for different systems that it can connect to, that we start to raise up this event, right? And so all the information around this event is all stitched together in one location so you can begin to do your investigation. And this, again, was done without any kind of rules that were met. There's no Hydra specific rule that we wrote to match this up. This was just the modeling that comes from Lacework. So we do the same thing though in AWS for CloudTrail. So for your CloudTrail environment, we also build out a baseline understanding of what CloudTrail looks like and what it's doing every day. So all those API calls, you don't have to write any rules for this. This is a polygraph for CloudTrail itself. And so we start to raise up those anomalies as people use AWS. If they start to use AWS in ways that we've never seen before and attaching that to our own security research and so on, we're going to raise up those events for you all without the need to write any kind of rules to maintain it. And then lastly on that is there's a few other capabilities that I'll mention in high level. Of course, out of the box, we do file integrity management. So FIM is built into the platform. So we are continuously monitoring all the files that are in your environment for known bad file hashes, and we'll alert you on that. We also do continuous vulnerability assessments. So we do this for your containers. We can integrate with any container registry really, and we'll do continuous vulnerability assessments of containers, and we also do the same for hosts, which is really which is a new capability that we launched out. So all the hosts that are running an environment, we continuously assess them. This is just something that as soon as you deploy us out, you get out of the box, and what's really unique to Lacework is vulnerability testing is pretty much a commodity these days. It exists all over the place. ECR has it. You just turn it on. But what Lacework has too is this context. It's not just about, hey, we'll alert you that you have a vulnerability in your container, but we will alert you continuously on everything that's running in your environment. So again, so you can prioritize on the systems that are most vulnerable, right? Vulnerability and vulnerable are not the same thing. You have to be able to have that context, and that's what we provide. So what's my whole world is my background is in automation, and that if what I care most about, like this data is very useful to me, and CI/CD is also something that's really important to me. But what I don't want to have to do is every single time that I want to learn about vulnerabilities in my environment, I don't want to log into the Lacework console and look to see whether or not I've got vulnerabilities. I want to be able to integrate Lacework into the processes so I can stay focused on on the products that I'm building out. And that's really where I plan to take us today is we're going to take vulnerability and our Lacework's vulnerability APIs, and we're going to integrate it into AWS code build. And I thought what might be fun is to build out a pipeline that builds our base images in AWS. So we're going to use a tool by one of my favorites, a company called HashiCorp. I'm sure many of you know HashiCorp. Yes. Never heard of them before. Yeah. So HashiCorp Packer, if you haven't heard about it, is a way to codify your images, hosts, or containers as well in code.
Scott, real quick, before we move into the next section, we had some questions from chat. Number one, I have to just inject my own stuff here too. When you said, can you tell me the relationship between what these containers talk to in your environment? Immediately, I could say yes, because I'm not running any containers. It's all Lambda over here. Serverless 100%, just saying. Not picking sides, just had to do that for my buddy Gunnar in the chat, because he's probably hearing all this container talk and trying to bail. Anyway, so Dr. Cheese Weasel, what a name, number one. Number two,
love it.
He or she wants to know how much this thing costs. What's the licensing type for using Lacework?
I tell you what, that's not my thing. I can't talk about licensing costs for it, but it is. We have Lacework is 100% SaaS. There's nothing for you to run inside your environment. We do have the ability to do just an agentless SKU where we sell you can connect up your clouds into Lacework, and we do the continuous configuration assessments and baselining of things like CloudTrail and so on. And that's purely just an integration between your public cloud and Lacework. And then there's the other side to it too, which is deploying out agents as in the Kubernetes land. We deploy as a daemon set inside of Kubernetes, or we deploy as an agent on hosts, or as a Docker container as well inside of environments. And that's a separate SKU. And many of our customers have started out with the agentless SKU and then move into the agent SKU as well as they grow out from there. But if you're interested in talking about learning more about the cost of Lacework, I would recommend you talk to someone from our team that can do it better justice than I can.
Cool.
But it is an annual. Sorry, just really quick. It's an annual subscription, right? So you sign up for a year, and it depends on the size of your environment, things like that. Yeah.
Cool. Dr. Cheese Weasel also wanted to know: are these vulnerability assessments that you're running customizable? Can you add in vulnerability testing, so to speak, I think is the question.
No, that'd be an interesting topic, Dr. Cheese Weasel, to hear about what it is you're trying to solve there. But no, what we're doing here is we are, in the case you'll see today, in the case of the containers, as we're looking at all the layers of the container as they were built and analyzing those for vulnerabilities. So I'll put a link in the chat to what our sources are that we pull in for our assessments of vulnerabilities. But these are, it's whatever packages you have in your containers, or in the case of hosts, whatever's installed on your host. It's not really customizable unless you install a new version of a package, or that would be the way that you change those results. So we test what's on the host or in the container.
Cool. Okay.
Scott, sorry. Sorry. Yeah, this is a quick question for me. So I think what I thought was really, really cool was that kind of little diagram where you can see how a certain person was logging in and then was installing Hydra. I guess from are there any metrics that Lacework has collected from customers where it's hey, this is how much Lacework has decreased our investigation time? Because something like that is a lot more intuitive, I guess, to humans than just 8 megabytes of logs, of log text. So yeah, just wanted to see if you guys have any metrics on that.
Yeah, hey, I really appreciate that, and I'm calling out to my friend Abner. I wish he was here to send me a link to some of the testimonials. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, our website at lacework.com has a lot of customer testimonials about the reduction that they've seen around the alerting and so on that goes out there. Alert fatigue is a real problem. Almost every one of our customers has suffered from it at one point in time. But with Lacework, that's what they're drastically reducing the number of alerts. And but I don't have a specific statistic for you today, Eugene. I'm sorry. I should have been prepared with that. So
no, that's okay.
But that's one of our main value props. One of the biggest return on investments is the reduction of all that alert fatigue and being able to just have high fidelity information around what's going on in your environment.
Hey, were you going to say something before I interrupted you?
No, I was just going to say you're getting a lot of love for that pineapple too, Eugene.
Oh yeah.
Pineapple. Pineapple to pineapple? Is that?
Yeah, pineapple to pineapple.
Might have to learn more about pineapple later.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, Scott, you were telling us about Packer when I rudely interrupted you, and right before we get right into that, I'm gonna have you do this, Eugene. Do you want to give us a cool summation of what we've been doing so far, and what do we have to look forward to?
Yeah, so for those of you who have just joined us, we are currently here with Scott Ford, Principal Architect from Lacework. And the general theme of today's episode is security and CI/CD. So I explained a little bit earlier what CI/CD is. Just a 1-minute refresher, continuous integration, continuous delivery. It's the kind of model that all companies now are trying to get better at. No one has perfected it because the ever-evolving workflow. And we have Scott kind of demonstrating, well, first past 20 minutes just kind of explaining what Lacework is, what the product that he works on, and what he is going to be showing us is detecting the security issues before it even kind of hits into production, maybe in your CI/CD pipeline, because as I said before, your CI/CD pipeline is ever evolving as your team and company understands its application better. So.
That's great. Yeah, thanks, Eugene. Yeah, I really, Lacework is a very dense topic, and I just barely scratched the surface on everything we're doing there. But that high level understanding, it's 100% SaaS. It's continuous configuration assessments, continuous analysis of CloudTrail, building out baselines. Everything that you see inside of Lacework is without the need to write or maintain any rules about your environment. We handle all that for you. Now, we just recently released this new capability around host vulnerability assessments. And so we run continuous assessments for vulnerabilities of all the hosts in your environment. And there's something that's really unique. We talked about this before about the problem state and what Lacework is solving. A large majority of our customers, and maybe you guys have seen this too with customers that you're working with, when it comes to hosts, when it comes to, say, spinning up instances in EC2, really a lot of our customers are moving to a model where the hosts themselves are ephemeral, right? There's that term that's been around for a while, cattle, not pets, right? Where if you've got a vulnerability in your environment or you've got a new change, that might just be that you roll out a new a new AMI with the new version of your application, and you spin up a new environment and you cut over from one to another, also known as blue-green deployments, right? And so what Lacework has is our new host vulnerability capability does continuous assessments of vulnerabilities in your environment, but we also understand all of the information about these hosts that are running out there and whether they're online, whether they're offline, whether, there's also the difference between a vulnerability, but also is the vulnerability, is it active in the environment, but also is the package on the host that has the vulnerability, is it actually active on that host? These are all things that are really useful and stitched all together. So this is just something, again, with our host vulnerability, once you deploy Lacework out, if you're using our agent side of the product, you just get this, right? But to Eugene's point, if you are adopting that model of, say, blue-green deployments where your hosts themselves are ephemeral, then it's if you're not doing it already, you should have a pipeline, which we were touching on earlier. You should have a pipeline for how those images are built. And one of the best tools it's been around for a while out there for building these base images is HashiCorp Packer. It's totally open source. You can build using a template file. You can build base images from the same template file that would, say, be your EC2 instance. You could also build vagrant boxes for local development testing. All that's built in. They've got lots of support for the different clouds that exist out there, but a wonderful tool. If you've not used it before and you're interested, now's your chance, because I'm going to take you through building out what we'll call an AMI factory, and we'll use Packer to build out base images, and then knowing too that in order to really use the parts, the vulnerability testing with Lacework, you need to be a Lacework customer. That's fine, but even if you're not a Lacework customer, you can still go through this tutorial with me. I'm going to do it live, and I'll take you to a point that until you have Lacework keys, you can build along with me, and then from there, I'll show you what you can do if you're a Lacework customer as well. So it's really important to be able to not only detect vulnerabilities at runtime, but also too, if you have the ability to test them at build time and catch those vulnerabilities before they go out, that's what we're going to show you today and what Packer by integrating Lacework and Packer, get that security testing earlier into the build process. So you guys ready? Should we do this?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, so first things first. So I have built an open source Git repo with all of the code that you need to run this. And so first and foremost is open up a browser and head on out to github.com/lacework. And once you're at our Git, then you can search for Up and Running, which is a series that I develop. And you'll scroll down, you'll see there's this Up and Running with AWS code build. And so I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And this repo has all of the files that you need to build your first Packer pipeline with code build and all the instructions to walk you through it. So I'm literally just going to use my own instructions to walk us through this thing, and we'll test and see how well I did on getting this all together. So what we need to do first is you need, there are some prereqs in this. You need to have a GitHub account. Sorry for you folks if you are using Subversion. I don't think so, but I think everybody's on Git at this point. Come on, and if you're not, get on Git. And then second of all, of course, you are going to need an AWS account. We're using code build, so you'll need to be able to log in. You need to have permissions to launch out services. And then optionally, if you want to add in the Lacework vulnerability testing, you're in the Lacework account, and I'll walk you through that process. But the first thing you need to do, though, is we need to fork the code. We need to fork this code over to your own personal account. So I'm going to go ahead and click fork. I'm going to choose my Lacework account here. I'm going to fork this code. And this is so we are going to be making changes to this code. You have to be able to make changes in your own account to this. So great. So the code is now forked over. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to move to set up AWS code build. Now, I'm already logged into the console. We're going to do this all pretty manually through the console. You can talk about automating it if you're interested in continuing the conversation. I'm a big fan of Terraform. We could talk about building this all out through automation. We'll just do it manually through here. Once you're in the console, you can go ahead and just search for code build, and that will launch it out. Now, I'm working completely in US East 1. Should work in any region that you want, but we need to create a new build project. And so I'm going to go ahead and click Create New Build Project, and we're going to give this project a name. So all build projects need to have a name. There's a number of different configuration we put in place. We'll just call this one AMI Builder, and that's fine. AMI Builder is great. And from there, we can leave the descriptions the same, fine. We don't need additional tagging, et cetera. When it comes to the source code, this is where we need to be able to give, we're going to choose, you could choose AWS code commit if that's where your code was stored. As I mentioned before, I built this out before with AWS code commit, and it works just great too. So if that's where you're storing your code. But in this case, because we've used GitHub, we're going to go ahead and choose GitHub, and you need to now allow code build to connect to your GitHub account. There's multiple ways to do this. You can use a personal access token if you know about that. You have a personal access token. You can use a personal access token. I'm going to choose OAuth, and it's really, really simple. Just click the connect to GitHub. It's going to pull this up. And it's going to ask you to confirm that you want to give code build access to your GitHub account. I'm going to confirm it. Perfect. And now we can go ahead and we can connect to, I'm going to go ahead and copy in this URL to the source. So now you can see here, this is important, right? So this is my own personal GitHub. So Scott Ford-LW. If you're following along, you should be able to do the same. Just fork it, make sure it's yours right there. Okay, so what's next? So next is the environment. So with pipelines, the jobs that we run in pipelines, this is the same of any pipeline technology, is is they run on systems, right? You can have static job runners. More commonly these days is use Docker containers as the job runners. And so AWS Code Build's great because it has this all figured out for you. You don't have to like configure the pipeline yourself. You could create your own job runners using a custom Docker image if you want. But in my case, I'm going to use the ones that are right out of the box. So Amazon Linux 2 is the one that I'm going to roll with right now. And I'm going to just choose the standard runtime. And for image, I'm going to use the latest x86 64, so standard 3.0. Should work fine. Environment type is Linux. I don't need any kind of privileged jobs on this particular container, so I'm going to leave that as set. Now, with AWS, hopefully you're familiar with how IAM roles work inside of AWS, but Code Build needs an IAM role to interact with other services inside of AWS, and so by the default, you can use it'll auto-populate with the name of the builder, of the project name, and it'll create this service role. So Code Build AMI Builder service role. That's fine. I'm just going to leave it as the default. This is going to create some default access that AWS Code Build needs to access certain things. Now, when you're configuring job runners, oftentimes there are you want to leverage environment variables. Now, I know out of the box there's one environment variable that we're going to want to use, and that is one called AWS region. And I'm going to choose US-East-1, and it's just a plain text environment variable, and that's it, right? So we've was there a question?
No, I think
Cool.
There was a bit of an echo.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, so next section in the setup here is to use a build spec. Now, build specs are the configuration file inside of Code Build, and I've already built one out for you. Build specs are really simple YAML files that describe the different stages of a particular build. Now, the Amazon Linux image that we're using, it's just a vanilla Amazon Linux image. It doesn't have any tools involved. If we're going to use Packer, we need to have that image install Packer. We need Packer installed on it. So you can see we built out a job here that installs HashiCorp Packer. We use JQ for some other tooling. And then once we have Packer installed, we validate that Packer's installed correctly by running a validation of this Amazon Linux Packer template, which I'll show you here in a minute, which is a Packer template JSON file that I've supplied for you. And so it runs a validation, and then from there it moves into the build job. And this is some unique stuff too. The way that Packer works today is that we need to give Packer access to the Amazon's APIs. So we're going to configure the credentials on the fly inside of our build job on the job runner and be ready to go and build our Packer job. So all of this is inside of the build spec. I'd never used AWS Code Deploy before the last couple of weeks, and the documentation was super easy. It was really easy to get going. If you're interested in that, I highly recommend you dig into the AWS build spec docs, and you can see all the different things you can build. But for today, I've supplied all this. Should be easy to go. So we're just going to use the existing build spec that's in the repo. Everything else so far is fine. We are going to use logs using CloudWatch, which is super cool. As we build, we'll be able to actually tail the logs and watch our jobs build in real time. So with that, right, we've got pretty much everything configured out. We're going to go ahead and click Create Build. Oops. This already exists. That's fine. I'll just call this one 2. I've, of course, been testing this out a number of times beforehand, so hopefully the demo gods are with me.
Scott,
but
you're
I'll
not
go
doing
ahead.
this live right now without any.
Well, I am doing it live right now, but of course we want to test it out before we actually build it out. So, cool. I wanted to make sure to just roll this right along with everybody else, though. All right, so we've got a job configured, but we're not yet ready to build our first job. And this is important. Wow. So we've created our project. Now we need to update the policy the IAM role policy for Packer. Packer needs to be able to call and interact with EC2 for some specific things. If you're not familiar, Packer creates its own security group. It creates its own key pair and everything ephemerally. And when the job ends, it deletes them all. So this is all done in the background by Packer. But in order to do that, you need to update the policy to give Packer this particular access. So
yeah, can I just say real quick, Scott? Like for anybody who's if you've never built an AMI before, you actually have to build it in an EC2 instance and then capture it with that, like with the actual running EC2 instance, you copy the AMI off of that. So Packer goes and does that for you, right? It'll go in, spin up an EC2 instance, it'll SSH into that EC2 instance, and then capture the AMI for you through all that. And terminate the EC2 instance too, right? Like I think that's
right.
That's something that I missed the first time that I had to build an AMI. I thought like, oh, is there just an API for like I call the AWS CLI and have it like, here's my script, go run it or something. But no, like it actually spins up the actual EC2 instance and like takes a.
It absolutely does. Yeah, it's going to launch it out live, give you the ability to interact with that instance, install whatever software you want on it, and then makes a snapshot of that running instance, and that's the basis for your AMI. But for Packer is going to remember again, we have an Amazon Linux job runner that has no Packer. We install Packer on it. We configure all the credentials so that Packer can start to interact with the APIs, but all of that is based off of whatever this policy has. And so we need to update the policy to give some more, to update from the defaults to give some more EC2 permissions. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy this update of this JSON right here. And we're going to go over to services, and I'm going to just right click on this and launch out IAM in a new tab. And once we're over here, we can go ahead and click on roles, and we will go ahead. If I type AMI builder, you can see here's AMI builder 2, which is the one that we just created, last activity none. And I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and you've got this policy name right here. So code build AMI policy builder US East-1. I'm going to click on that. And here is the default policy that got created when we created our build project. I'm going to go ahead and click edit policy and click on JSON. And I'm going to scroll down here to about line 41. That's right. Yeah, 41. We'll go ahead and add a comma and we'll paste this in. Now, the formatting kind of sucks, but it does all work. We'll go ahead and click review. And so now you can see the EC2 instances and the permissions that we just applied. You can trust me on this one, or feel free to just delete this if you're following along. We'll go ahead and click Save the Changes. And so with that, now you can see that we're now allowing EC2 for this particular policy, and this should give Packer everything that it needs to run this first job. All right, so following our own instructions here, we're ready to now kick off our first build of Packer. So let's go ahead and move back over into our code build, and we'll go ahead and click Start Build. And everything here should be default. We're going to do a single build, and we're just going to go ahead and click Start Build and cross our fingers that the demo gods are with us today, as they say. Who's ever done this live? I mean, you hope for the best.
I mean, I was sweating when I was just my simple application. I was just hoping, hey, when I refresh, please have the new stuff come up.
I mean, I'm not adverse to troubleshooting live. We could do it, but it's more fun when it just works out.
I've got the easiest job on stream. I'm just color commentary over here. That's my job. What's your favorite Halloween candy?
Oh man, I've always been a chocolate and peanut butter guy myself. So
Reese's, yep.
Yeah, Reese's are. Yeah. Oh, dude, Reese's Pieces. I mean, sorry, I'm a child of the '80s, so E.T. man, Reese's Pieces. That's how I've always been a big fan myself.
The longest Reese's Pieces commercial ever filmed, E.T.
Yeah, right. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, what about you, Eugene? What's your favorite Halloween candy?
Probably be Sometimes, like if I feel it, Snickers. Other times, my go-to is probably Reese's. Just can't beat it.
Okay.
Yep. What about you, AM?
So I've been vegan for the past year, so it's harder to find candy. If I'm going vegan candy, there's this company called No Way, WHEY. They make a really good. It's kind of like a Milky Way, almost, but like just regular candy, M&Ms. That's my go-to.
You know, a pretty good
And-
vegan candy I think I can suggest is actually I need to look this up. But it's a sour gummy bear that doesn't lose its sourness as you like keep eating it. Let me look it up for a second. Scott, I think you're about to say something.
No, I'm with you too. I'm sorry. We buy a bunch of those vegan candies these days that are so good, and I'm trying to remember the one right now. My wife would always buys them, but they're delicious. So that I can still get my chocolate peanut butter fix, but vegan style as well.
AM, it's called Albany's.
Albany's.
Albany's world's best 12 flavor sour gummy bears.
Okay, I'm writing it down. For my M&M, my vegan M&Ms, I get they're called Little Secrets. Free advertising apparently for them. Anyway, that's. So I think we bought enough time. We've got some logs here at least.
We do. So let me go ahead while we're doing this too. I think it's important. I appreciate that as well. I don't want to make any assumptions that anybody's seen a Packer template before. And, I mean, if you've seen some JSON, it's not that exciting, but it is important to understand what it is that we're doing here. It's really, really simple, right? So Packer templates, they can be defined either in a JSON, but Hashi has their own configuration language called HCL. You can also define Packer templates in HCL. But the way it works is you can define things like variables at the beginning. We have the AWS region defined as a variable, and we're inheriting that from the environment. And if you recall from the last step, we did when we created our build project, we created an environment variable for AWS region. So our Packer template inherited that region. Now, we've also got this variable for AWS AMI name, and we're going to set that as Amazon Linux Packer and the time. Now, this is where Packer's really flexible is you've got these different builders that exist out there. As I mentioned, they have them from Amazon and all the other cloud providers. They've got things for like, if you're familiar with HashiCorp has another tool called Vagrant for building out development environments. So you could spin up Linux boxes or Windows boxes on your local workstation. You could have this same template could support multiple builders. It could build an Amazon AMI, but it can also build a Vagrant box at the same time too. So here I'm just using the Amazon EBS builder, and this is where we're defining all the information. I'm just going to launch a small T2 micro. You can do the AMI name, the AMI description that we're going to launch from. So the source AMI is what we're building from, and you can actually do searches, fuzzy searches for your instances. So like if I want to make sure that I'm always building from the latest Amazon Linux 2 instance, we can filter and search down on that particular instance. If I wanted to build from a different type, whether it be Ubuntu or CentOS or Red Hat, that's all things you can filter on that source AMI. But that's the base image that we're going to build off of. Now, once you get all of that configured, this is where you get to what do I want to do with this instance once it comes online? And you can use different types of provisioners. So in this case, I'm just using a really simple shell provisioner. We're just going to do a yum update. So Amazon Linux is of the same flavor as CentOS and Red Hat. So we're just going to run an update of all the packages on there, pull in any of the latest security updates. But if you wanted to do anything else, like whatever, install any software you want, all that is the place where you can use these different provisioners. And they've got shell provisioners, and they've got provisioners for configuration management like Chef and Ansible Ansible, things like that. So lots of different stuff you can do. Sky's the limits. Automation's a ton of fun. We're keeping this really simple, but hopefully if you've always wanted to build a Packer pipeline or try out Packer, this gives you an idea of how this happens. Now we scroll over here to the output of this, we can see exactly what happened during this build job, right? So AWS Code Build launched out that Amazon Linux instance, and once it was launched out, we entered into the pre-build phase, and we installed HashiCorp Packer. We grabbed the latest release of it, and then we installed JQ, which we're going to use to do some parsing of some JSON, and got that set up. We then did a validation of the HashiCorp Packer template, and if we had found any errors, this would have errored out. It would have stopped. This is more the fundamentals that Eugene was talking about before. Capture errors early in the process. If we've got a bad Packer template, catch that early through validation, and then stop the build, go fix it, and push it back through. Then we entered into the build phase. We configured the AWS credentials, which is that on any instance, AWS instance, you've got this metadata URL where we can pull out information about the host that we're running on, and we were able to pull out our credentials, stick them into a file, and then start to populate some other environment variables that we can use. After that, we ran Packer's build command, which is just Packer build, and we pointed it to our template, Amazon Linux Packer.json, and moved on with the process. So this instance was launched out, and really simple stuff. So what we see right here with our Yum update is there were no packages that were marked for update. Now, if you're not familiar with Amazon EC2, right? So Amazon, you guys publish all these. You have your own images. That's a continuous process for yourself of always, building those base images for your customers to build off of. You patch them for security vulnerabilities, but they do drift, right? There are times where the base images in the marketplace, not just Amazon, but Ubuntu, Red Hat, they all have vulnerabilities over time. So there are times where you're going to capture that there are vulnerabilities, and there are vulnerabilities that could be patched. So in this case, we're excited that it says that there's no packages marked for update, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we don't have vulnerabilities. So we want to be able to test that further. But with that, though, we created this new image, this new AMI, which is in US East 1. So let's go over and just take a look and see what it is that we built. And so we'll go over to EC2 and launch out a new. And let's go ahead and click on our AMIs. And we'll choose Amazon. Well, I've got a bunch of them already because, of course, I've been testing them, right? But here's our Packer image from today. This is not from today. Let's see what the latest is. There's from today. Here's the Amazon image that we just built. So BCC83. Let's double check. Yep, there it is. BFFC83. And there's that latest image right there. All right, so we're good. We've got now the foundations for creating an AMI factory. You could use whatever images you want. If you're not using Amazon 2 Linux inside your environment, you want something else, you could start to tweak this out and hopefully just build on this process. It's really critical that you have a pipeline for your base, if you're using EC2 instances, for your base images in there. And so the sky's the limits. It's fun stuff. It's really creative, and it never ends. Like we talked about this before. You always want to improve on your CI/CD process, adding more testing, more automation. And so these are the basic foundations. I'll pause here for just a second. Eugene, AM, any questions? Any questions from the channel?
So far, we actually haven't even done anything related to Lacework yet either. Like you could go through almost everything that you've done here without a Lacework account so far, right, Scott?
That's really important. Yep, I wanted to make sure that this was valuable for everybody, whether or not you're a Lacework customer or not. I'm passionate about automation, and so up to this point, if you're following along here with the example code repo, we take it all the way through to just getting you with your first build a Packer, and then adding Lacework vulnerability scanning is the next section of this tutorial. And in that case, you really are going to need to have Lacework API keys in order to authenticate with Lacework. But if you're interested in giving that a trial, I think one of my colleagues has added a link in to the chat where you could go and sign up for a trial and get more information from us about that. But from here, I'm just going to move forward with assuming that either you are a Lacework customer or you just want to follow along and see what it is that we do.
And I would like to just kind of add that the idea of kind of customizing like your CI/CD pipeline, this is it, right? Like, if not Lacework, something else. If not AMI like configuration or vulnerability detection, there's something else. So just want to keep that in mind.
That's right. Yep. CI/CD pipeline development is a continuous process. You just always work at it. My team and I, we live and breathe this stuff too. We're always working at adding more test-driven development to our pipelines, security testing, functional testing, unit testing, et cetera. It never stops. So it's fun stuff though. It's really creative. Hopefully this is inspiring to you. All right, so let's go ahead and let's do some vulnerability testing. Before I do, I actually didn't even think about this for a sec to talk about the relationship of Lacework and what you're seeing now. So my world is really is less about UIs than it is about everything we've been talking about: CI/CD, automated processes, interacting with APIs. My team and we develop tools and integrations with the Lacework platform that allow developers to integrate Lacework wherever they need to get more security into the process. Again, so like if you're a developer and you care about, say, you're responsible for these hosts, you don't want to have to like build an AMI and then wait for the results to show up in Lacework. You want those results at the time you're building, get that sort of information. So we build an open source Lacework command line interface. It's written in Go. It runs on any platform, Linux, Mac OS, Windows, and has a number of different capabilities once it's installed for your environment. So things like getting those compliance reports, getting access to the events that we trigger so you can triage that information, information about the container and host vulnerability assessments. All of that stuff is like, if I log in the morning and I sit down and I want to know what's most actionable in my environment, I don't want to have to necessarily log in. So I might say something like Lacework events list, right? And get a list of all the events that were triggered in my environment. You could see there's a bunch of different events in here. Oh, that's too much information. Let's say -- severity. Let's say critical. And we'll get a list of just what's critical in the environment. And so I can start to filter down, dive into this information and see what's going on out there, right? So this is kind of the interaction of Lacework has a number of public-facing APIs. The Lacework CLI provides a really fast interaction for our customers to get actionable insights into what's going on in their environment. Now, I have there's lots of information. I have other blog posts up about the Lacework CLI itself. But when it comes to this host vulnerability that we're talking about, Lacework vulnerability, I hate typing that out, host -- help, right? So Lacework vulnerability has the ability to interact with the APIs and get the data for the vulnerabilities that are inside your environment. And just to show you this too, we are super lazy systems administrators, and so there's aliases for everything. Lacework vul host, and we can say things like list CVEs inside the environment. And drill down to see all of the active CVEs that are inside of a given environment. Sorry, that's coming. It's a little bit big, but I'll tighten this up. But you can see here's all the CVEs that are actually active inside the environment, et cetera. Now, we also have, let's see, hopefully this is a little bit better, is the ability to if you want to get an assessment of a host at any given time, Lacework's CLI has a Lacework Vol host. We have the ability to generate what's called a package manifest. And a package manifest is just a list of all the packages that are installed on a host and their versions. And our APIs have the ability to receive a package manifest from a customer and assess that package and return the results immediately. Now, I can't do this on my Mac OS because it's not supported. It's not supported on Mac OS, but Lacework Vol host generate -pkg manifest -help. You can see it will generate a package manifest in the format that our API needs to receive it in. And then we also have this other command right here, which is the Lacework vulnerability host scan package manifest --local. And what that does is it looks at the local host, it generates a package manifest, it submits that to Lacework and returns those results to wherever it's run. And so these are for our customers that need immediate results in something like a build pipeline, and it's what we're going to do now with the pipeline that we built already. We're going to update our code build job to install Lacework on the instance. As Am talked about, Packer actually launches out an instance for you in your environment. We're going to install the Lacework CLI on it. We're going to generate a package manifest, so all the packages that are on AWS's base image, we're going to submit that to Lacework. Lacework's going to return those results, and we're going to get the results about vulnerabilities at build time. Now, in order to do this, the first thing that we need to do is, if you're a Lacework customer, you need to have API keys. This is fundamental to any API that exists out there. And I'll walk you through it. I've already got API keys. It's really simple. You just log into Lacework, click on settings, go to API keys, my API key, and go ahead and click save. And then we're going to go ahead and just download this API key to the local laptop. Now, it comes down in a JSON file on the local system. I'm not going to show you this because they are secrets. It comes down, and the contents of that file have an API key ID and an API key secret. And those are the two configurations that we need for our CLI that's on the instance can authenticate with Lacework and submit this scan result. Now, something that we haven't talked about to this point, fundamental if you're not used to building out pipelines, when it comes to secrets, you do not want to store secrets in plain text in any pipeline, right? You want to make sure that those secrets are kept secret. Now, there's lots of different ways that you could do this. Every pipeline technology has typically a way to hide secrets. Now, the Lacework CLI that we're going to use for this integration can inherit environment variables. So we're going to set the Lacework account, the Lacework API key, and the secret part, the Lacework secret, as environment variables. But what we're going to do to store those is we're going to use another Amazon service, which is called AWS Systems Manager Parameter Store. And this is another service I'd never used before this process, and it was super easy. And thanks to Am and Eugene for pointing me in this direction, because it was really easy to get going. But we'll go ahead. I've actually already set this up over in US West 2, and I'll just show you. I'm not going to actually create this for you live. It's really easy to do, but if you log into your AWS and you go to AWS Systems Manager, on the left-hand side is this application management parameter store. And if you click on that, you can create parameters. And parameters, we'll call this one foo. And parameters could be different things. They can be strings, they can be lists, they can be secure strings, and so on. And what I've done is I've created 3 different environment variables. So I've called one Lacework account, and in that case, it's the name of my account. And I think my account was like customer demo, the account that I'm using here. Right. So here's my account name, customer demo. And then and that's just a plain text string. I've also created one that was called API_key, and that was a value is also a plain text string with my API key name. And then finally, the last one was an API secret, and this one I used a secure string, and that is totally hidden. And I think we come back over here and just do SSM and parameters, right? You can interact with SSM and you can see these values, right? So I've got this parameter LW account. It's a string and it's customer demo. I don't care. It's not a secret. But if you do something like, I think it's Lacework API_secret, what you get back is the encrypted values. So your strings are stored secretly. They have to be decrypted in order to get that information. All this is handled behind the scenes in the AWS platform. So super delightful, really easy to set up. I've got those 3 values already set up inside of my environment. So if I cancel out, go ahead and hit cancel. You can see that I've got LW account, which is my account name, LW API key, which is my key name, and LW API secret. All right, moving forward with this. So we've downloaded an API key. We've used the AWS Systems Manager parameter store to store our secrets in there. You could use that if you move forward with this with other things. Now, the next thing is AWS code build has to have the ability to pull those secrets. It needs those permissions. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to add a new permission to our IAM role that we built to the previous step. And it's just this one, SSM get parameters. That's all it needs. And I'm going to copy that one line. Feel free to copy the whole thing if it makes more sense to you. And I'm going to head back over to, again, we'll do it from the beginning. So we'll say roles, and it's AMI. Builder 2 was my role. We're going to edit this policy. We're going to edit the JSON. And here is our list right now. And I'm going to go ahead and add in a new one right there. So there's our SSM get parameters. That's the update to the policy. We'll go ahead and click save and save those changes. And so now code build should have the ability to pull those parameters in and use them as part of the build process. What's next? So now we need to update the build spec. So before we talked about the build spec the build spec is the configuration for AWS code build itself. The first thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need to clone this down to your local workstation. So again, remember, I'm in my forked version of this code, Scott Ford LW, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to clone this down to my local workstation. And we'll say git clone that. Whoops, that's not that. Sorry. Git clone our forked version, and I'm going to go ahead, once I clone this down, I am going to open this up in a code editor of choice, and my choice is VS Code for today. And we'll bump this font up just a little bit so everybody can see this. All right, so here is all the code that we have. We have the build spec. Now, what I've done is I've created everything for this next section. I have examples with the parameter store, with Lacework. So if you want, they're all right here, right? So, but what we're going to do is just add in this new section, which updates the environment to add in some new environment variables from the parameter store. So we'll go ahead and add that in right here at the top of our build spec. Save this out. And we, of course, now we need to update these changes. So I'm going to say cd to up and running. So if I run git status, GS is git status. You can see that I've modified the build spec. So I'm going to add those. I have to apologize. I have a lot of aliases. I'm a very lazy systems administrator, so I'm going to type GAA, which is git add all changes. And so git status is now stashed. And so I'm going to say git commit message, and I'm going to say updating build spec with param store. Hopefully that would pass your test, Eugene, for an okay commit. Now, I don't recommend this. I would normally check out my own feature branch. I'd push it up. I'd have somebody else review it, but we're rolling fast and we're short on time. So I'm going to say git push origin master, and we've got that pushed up. All right. So now if I come back over here to my repo and I look at my build spec now has the parameter store. Fantastic. So back over, the next step that we need to do is we are going to actually update the Packer template itself. Needs to have a bunch of new stuff in here. All right, so we've got some environment variables that we need to set. Again, we're going to be installing the Lacework CLI. We need to leverage environment variables for that. So we're going to update the variables to add in environment variables from that Lacework account, Lacework API key, Lacework secret from the parameter store. We're going to add in a new provisioner. And this isn't a deep Packer tutorial, but we talked about the different provisioners. This one's a file provisioner. It's going to create a really simple shell script on the local system that we'll use to install the Lacework CLI and then kick off that generate package manifest and then submit the package manifest. All those are in this file. If you're interested in seeing this particular Lacework, this particular shell script, it's about as basic as it gets. There's nothing special to it. But we're going to install that onto the host. We are then going to update our shell, our environment variable on the actual host itself. So the Lacework CLI needs to be able to leverage those environment variables from our build job. So we then populate them on the host here. So our shell command has access to the Lacework account, API key, API secret. And then you can see here, this was the only thing we were doing before, which is the yum update. Now we're going to actually source our Lacework CLI. And then what we do is we actually remove the Lacework CLI from the host afterwards because there's really no reason to package that up on the Packer base image. And just once we're done, we remove Lacework from the host itself. And so we clean it up and we should be good to go there. So what I'm going to do, though, is I'm just going to actually copy this whole version of the Packer template, and I'm going to update the version that's on this host right here. That I pulled down. So back over here to our Packer template, I'm going to go ahead and select all. I'm going to paste, and that should have everything in there, the latest version. Click save. And we're going to now do the same thing as before, which is we have to run git status. You can see we've modified the JSON file here. So I'm going to git add all and then git commit message, and we'll say update Packer template with Lacework. All right, we're in the final push right here. So git push origin master. Whoops, that's not right. Master. Perfect. All right, let's go back and let's review just really quickly. We'll do unfortunately just the eyeball test here. Everything should be reviewed. Should be good to go. If we look at our Packer template now, it's got the Lacework bits in here. So we pull in the params, the environment variables. We set those environment variables on the host. We set up our shell script that will install Lacework and kick off a build job. We're going to then source that down below, and then we'll clean up the image by removing Lacework from the base image once we finished. All right, you guys with me?
Yeah.
Ready for the final test?
Okay,
cool.
Time check here, 6 minutes or so.
We're going to do it. It's going to be awesome. All right, we're going to come in just under the wire right now. Okay, so we're going to click off one last start a new build. And we're in Virginia. That's great. And I'm going to go ahead and click start build. And we're going to cross our fingers that we did everything right. And it's either all going to come together or it's going to fantastically fail in the last second. But I feel pretty good about this one. So while we wait for this to build, though, if you're interested again in learning more about Lacework, you can find us at lacework.com. I think some of my colleagues have added some information into the chat. We'd love to chat with you. We're working with amazing companies right now, just massive scale. The type of stuff that we're doing, the size of these, Kubernetes environments, hybrid environments using both static hosts as well as really ephemeral workloads. It's just massive scale, and we're really excited to chat with you, learn more about what you're doing, and we're living it too. I mean, we're also just a digital company building products and learning continuously and getting better. So we love to collaborate and love to chat with you more about what we're doing at Lacework. Okay, so look at that, decrypting parameter store environment variables. So far, so good.
Cool. Hey, while this is going, also Michael from Lacework shared a link with me to give out to all of you. I think something that you all might find a little interesting. So if you go to this link, I've heard there are stickers available for an exchange of signing up. I haven't tried it myself yet. I do want some stickers, so I probably will go fill this out myself too. Stickers are currency. Like I don't know if you all realize this. Like I have traded people for like work stuff. Like, hey, I need you to do this for me, and I give them a sticker, and then they do it for me. So there's power in these stickers. I'm just saying.
Stickers can be cute.
I know it's been a while since we've been able to do the FaceTime and pick up stickers from each other in person,
And also,
there were times where.
Oh, sorry, Scott, real quick. As this goes too, stay tuned. Coming up right after our show ends here in the next 3 minutes, we're doing an event. I think it's pretty much. It looks like a long event. 10 a.m. to 4:45 p.m. AEDT time. Starts up right after this AWS She Builds Day online. I put that link in chat earlier, but we will be dropping off here in 2 minutes to let them get up and going. But stay tuned. It's going to be great. It's going to be amazing.
So I figured out what I did, and it's not going to work today because the param store is not global, and I needed to create the params in the other environment as well. So we got close, but I'll just show you the end result of this, of what this actually looks like. You can see that once we install this, this is the params that I built were in US West 2. And so what happens is Lacework gets installed onto the particular host. In this case, we kick off a vulnerability scan of the local host. We then learn that this indeed has no vulnerabilities. The scan completes, we clean up the image, and then we publish it. I'll make sure to update the docs to build those params in the correct region. They've got to be in the same region. You learn something new every day. The other thing, too, that I don't touch on in this, gentlemen, is that what to do with vulnerabilities when you find them. It's a big topic. We internally, we kick off notifications to the right channels and get the right teams involved. You have to decide when to break the build, but we'll save that for another episode as well. So hopefully this was valuable to everybody, whether you're a Lacework customer or not. You learned a little bit about AWS code build, a little bit about building AMIs with Packer, and I look forward to collaborating with you. I'm on LinkedIn and love to chat, love to learn. So
yeah, let me put it back to our lower thirds real quick as we wrap up in this last minute. Go check out Lacework. There's a bunch of links that you can go learn more about. Tomorrow, I got to give a shout out for Eugene. I don't know if the Pineapple will be in attendance or not. I hope so. But Eugene will be starring in a webinar tomorrow with Lacework that you can go sign up for if you're interested. With another friend of mine, Abner, who was in chat earlier too. Abner is an old buddy of mine from Stackery, one of my favorite partners. Not to play favorites, Lacework is great too. And obviously, because you all picked up Abner, I mean, come on, that speaks for itself.
Hey, that was a big win. There's no doubt about it.
All right. Well, you've been watching AWS Howdy Partner. If you want to follow along with Scott's tutorial, the GitHub repo is below. This will be available as a video here in just a bit on the channel. Stay tuned for what's coming up next, the She Builds Online day. So thank you all for joining us on Howdy Partner. We'll be back next Monday, 2 p.m. Pacific. Thanks for joining us, Scott, and thanks for the rundown, Eugene. We'll see you soon.
See y'all later.
Thanks so much for having me. Talk soon.
Bye, Scott.